Welcome back, everybody, to Prime 3 Sports Radio, the podcast where we're talking everything sports and sports culture. I am your host, Rob Muniz. If you joined us for the last episode, I covered all the Raiders draft picks, and we went through and gave a breakdown of every single player. Looking forward to training camp. I know some of the workouts have started for some of the teams. We covered a little bit of the Las Vegas Raiders draft picks last time. A lot has happened since then. They have signed undrafted free agents. So I'm looking forward to getting into the film for that. I actually have a request to do a film on a couple of the particular guys. I know Darius Steele was one of them. So looking forward to breaking down each of those guys. As I said, there are 10 of them. And I think what excites me the most about this group is the level of experience. One guy that played less than 4 years, and the group averages over 4 years of college experience there. So really excited for all the experience there, and looking forward to getting in and giving you guys a breakdown on the next video here. Before we get started, wanted to cover something that's commonly talked about right now. One of the top topics, I guess we can say, is Aaron Rodgers. You know, he's been in the news recently. I guess there's a lot of trouble going on in the front office, not a lot of good communication, it sounds like, in Green Bay. So, of course, Rodgers has been tied to many other teams as far as the trade goes, as far as trading goes, and more in particular, of course, the Las Vegas Raiders are tied into it. Now, with Gruden as the coach, it seems pretty common that anytime a big free agent is available, the Raiders are definitely on the list. I know with all the history and stuff like that, a lot of people do want to play for the Raiders. So it's exciting to think about. As a Raiders fan, I know what it's like to get my hopes up about a big signing and it not go through, or it just, maybe it does go through and it doesn't pan out, and that pick goes somewhere else, or that free agent goes somewhere else eventually. So I'm trying not to get my hopes up too much about this. Obviously, Aaron Rodgers would change the clubhouse on any team. A lot of analysts are talking about, most teams becoming a Super Bowl contender once they get a guy like Rodgers there in the locker room, once they get a guy like that under center. So I've seen kind of a mixed bag of reactions as far as Raiders fans goes. I go through a lot of content, and on one side, there's a lot of people excited about the possibility of Rodgers coming to Las Vegas and taking charge of that offense. Of course, you're getting an MVP there. You're getting a guy that's a Super Bowl champion. And I mean, it's Aaron Rodgers. This guy he's the best at thinking on the fly. He's the best at improvising, and he goes to battle with his guys. So the thought of him coming and taking over on the Raiders, that's an exciting thought. But on the other side of it, Derek Carr has been playing well. I don't think he's been the issue. Our offense is actually really good. The only problem is they haven't been able to rest too much with the defense, allowing drive after drive, score after score. So one scenario I saw as far as accepting Rodgers and making something happen for that signing is Derek Carr's contract coming up. Now he has played well enough to ask for a big contract, and a lot of analysts are speculating that he is going to ask for top money. And with that being said, there's a scenario I heard where it comes out that we actually pay Aaron Rodgers less per year, as we would pay less per year than if we were to sign Derek Carr to an extension. So again, I've seen reactions on both sides of that. Obviously, on one side, it's great to have a Super Bowl champion. It's great to have an MVP in your locker room. On the other side of it, I mean, Derek Carr hasn't really been our problem. We all know the problem is defense. So it's really hard to get my hopes up one way or another. Of course, if Aaron Rodgers came and wore the silver and black, that'd be amazing to see. But I guess time will tell. There's stories coming out every day about this. A lot of them are starting to sound the same now. So we'll wait for a little bit of progress and see what happens. I kind of see the positive in both sides of it. I hate to see Derek Carr leave. It's hard to think about that right now. But as I said, we'll see. Time will tell. Speaking of historical franchises, the Dallas Cowboys, America's team, is definitely a team that I like to follow. Deion Sanders was a real big for me. He's one of my favorite athletes of all time. So as a kid, I watched a lot of the Cowboys because as I mentioned in my first episode, I actually grew up a Niners fan. So the Cowboys were our rivals back in the day, back in the 90s. That's when I watched the most Cowboys live games, if you will. And I remember those players, the big three, Aikman, Emmett, and Irvin are the first ones that stand out for me. But I remember as a kid, just really not liking the Cowboys and looking forward to going to battle with them year after year. But as I transitioned, became a Raiders fan later on, just the history that comes along with the Cowboys and their fan club and their owner, Jerry Jones, making headlines basically year after year. They're definitely a team that I like to follow. And again, it's just all goes back based on their history. So the reason I bring them up today is that they actually snagged one of the players that I wanted for the Raiders, which is Micah Parsons. So I mentioned in the first episode, there are a few of my favorite players in this draft. Obviously, not all of them went to the Raiders. We got one of them in Trevon Moehrig, the safety out of TCU. Definitely one of my favorite players in the draft. On that list, Patrick Surtain. The second, which everybody, I would say a lot of mock drafts had Dallas Cowboys taking Surtain. I thought it would be interesting to see him with the star on the side of his helmet and watch him go to work with that franchise. I was actually really looking forward to that. But of course, Surtain was snagged by Carolina, which was a surprise pick for a lot of analysts. A lot of people expected them to go quarterback. A lot of people thought they might, if they decided not to take the quarterback, that they might trade back and try to get a couple of picks out of that. But they went with Surtain, and Micah Parsons was available. Of course, on a side note, J.C. Horn, who the Cowboys might have signed, was also off the board. Back into Micah Parsons, he was my favorite linebacker of the draft, and I wanted the Raiders to take him at 17. I knew it was kind of a chance he might be taken before then, but without Horn available, without Surtain available, the Cowboys went ahead and jumped on that, and I think they got themselves a great draft pick. When I think of Penn State, I think of linebacker U, and so that kind of just made me go into the Cowboys draft and look at what kind of players that they got. They got 11 picks on this 2021 draft, and man, they got some good ones, including their first pick, who they took 12 overall with Micah Parsons. And looking forward to breaking down some of these picks. As I said, they got 11 players. There was a couple that I was actually pleasantly surprised with, looking forward to seeing them begin their professionals careers. There's a couple that I kind of questioned, you know what I mean? I obviously have zero clue what's going on in that draft room. There's a few guys here that I think have some crazy potential. So with that being said, I actually brought on a Dallas Cowboys fan for you guys today. Is probably the number one Dallas Cowboys fan that I know. He is a co-host of the Why We're Fans podcast, and that podcast basically breaks down the fandom of every single team. So if you're a fan of football and you got a story behind why you love your team and you want to share some good memories, go ahead and check out the Why We're Fans podcast. I will go ahead and include that in the link below. Without further ado, let me go ahead and introduce my guest here. Got co-host of Why We're Fans podcast, Duran Muniz. Duran, what's going on, man?
Nothing much, man. Thanks for having me on today. Love talking football, and usually I'm talking about other people's favorite teams. So I'm glad to be talking about the Dallas Cowboys today.
Yeah, man. Looking forward to breaking this down. I went ahead and made a couple of notes on these players. There's a couple that I particularly like. So looking forward to kind of comparing there and getting into that. Before we get into that, do you have any comments on that? I started off the episode talking about Aaron Rodgers and that whole situation. Do you have any comments or anything you want to input on that? Well, it's a hot topic.
I think of it kind of in two ways. Like, number one, if you're the owner of the Green Bay Packers, you have to make Aaron Rodgers happy. And I think that's kind of the benefit of having the owner that the Dallas Cowboys has. He could kind of step in and make deals like this happen and play mediator and keep everyone happy. And especially if you're the owner of the Green Bay or the manager of the Green Bay Packers, Do you really want to be known as the guy that kind of let Aaron Rodgers out the door and see him have success somewhere else, maybe Denver, maybe Oakland? So I don't see him leaving. I don't think he should leave. But I would say if there's someone that has the balls to kind of put together a good package and, go for him, I think Gruden's that guy.
Okay. I like the thought of that. I definitely like the thought of that more than Rodgers playing in Denver. That's one thing. It's like I don't necessarily want to give up Derek Carr, but I do not want to see Rodgers go to Denver. I mean, it could turn out that he just stays in Green Bay. It was brought to my attention a day or so ago that Green Bay actually has the number 1 line in the NFL right now. So to walk away from that might be kind of tough, but I mean, I guess we'll see what happens.
Yeah, I didn't know that.
All right, so moving right along, I'm going to have you go in and we're going to talk about the Cowboys draft picks here. They got 11 picks. So before we break each of them down, how do you feel overall the Cowboys did with the draft? I won't ask you to give a draft grade or anything crazy. I know that's all relative. How do you feel the Cowboys did this year in the draft?
I think overall they kind of went the direction that I wanted. I mean, you mentioned the 11 picks. 8 of those guys were on defense. The first 6 were all defensive players. So I know that was a big area that the Cowboys wanted to hit. That's what I wanted to hit. I mean, their defense was horrible last year. The other thing that I noticed is this is a big size speed draft. They drafted a lot of players with either length, speed, things like that, with a lot of, kind of traits that kind of fit into a scheme. I didn't really like that as much because I kind of believe in drafting more of the better player rather than trying to fit one person into your scheme. But, I hope I'm wrong with a couple of these guys because I have some doubts whether it be, their physical ability or their off-field issues. But, usually Dallas does pretty good in the draft. So I'm putting my faith in them this year.
Got it. So just based on the 2020 season, what would you say were a couple of the particular needs of the Dallas Cowboys?
It hurts when your team is playing and every week they're just getting ran on. So I think that's more, that hurts you more than just getting beat over the top for a 50-yard touchdown. When a team is just constantly pounding the middle and just getting 4, 5, 6, breaking a 15 to 20 on you every week, it's just demoralizing. So I really wanted them to fix the middle of their defense. Defensive tackles was the first position that I scouted this year because of that. And then I moved on to linebackers and corners. But those were the main issues that I wanted to stop is, just stop them from running on you. We'll get the back end maybe with some free agents and things like that. But I just wanted to stop the run. That was my main focus this year.
Got it. Yeah, defense was definitely a need for the Las Vegas Raiders. So I was very happy to see a lot of the defensive guys taken in the draft.
Yeah, you feel me on that end.
Definitely. Yep. So going back, I mentioned earlier, really liking Patrick Surtain Jr. and kind of thinking he would be a good fit for Dallas. I know J.C. Horn was also pretty big prospect for you guys that, potentially could have been taken if he was there. I think he probably might have been. I might have just answered it for you there, but do you think if any of those guys were still available, they would have been taken over Micah Parsons?
Absolutely. I think so. I mean, Dallas has spent some pretty heavy draft capital on their linebackers already. Jalen Smith was a high 2nd round pick that they invested a whole offseason just rehabilitating him to get him ready. And then just a few years ago, Leighton Vander Esch was a 1st round linebacker pick. So I was kind of putting my faith in those guys to kind of turn the corner this year and play a little bit better. And I wanted one of those cornerbacks to hold in the back end. And if you looked everywhere, everyone was showing a cornerback going to Dallas, whether it be Horn or Surtain. But as we know, the draft, once it starts, it doesn't stop for anyone. And when your players are gone, you got to think on your feet and make a quick decision.
Right. And Dallas, I mean, like you said, anything could happen in the draft, and they actually made a trade with Philadelphia. And I feel like the story was, trying to be blown up a little bit more of a situation than it was. But I mean, 2 obvious rivals making a deal there.
Yeah, I did not expect that. I don't think I've ever seen them trade with Philly that early in the draft, but I think what it came down to was Philly wanted to jump the Giants and get Devontae Smith. And so he was going to be in the division no matter what. And I kind of like that he went to Philly instead because I'm not a big fan of Hurts. And I think it's, I would rather him be in Philly than be with the Giants. I like their quarterback a little bit more. So overall, I think it was worth it because the cornerback that we wanted wasn't there. We moved back, picked up a 3rd-round pick, and hopefully we make some good use out of that 3rd-round pick.
Yeah. Interesting to see what's going to happen there in Philadelphia. I mean, they're obviously giving that offense 100% to Hurts. Hurts is their guy. So, yeah, it'll be interesting to see what's going to happen there. I don't feel like I've seen enough from Hurts to make me think that, he can take them to the promised land. I actually was a big fan of Carson Wentz, so I'm actually looking forward to watching him play a little bit more this year, and I'm hoping he could stay on the field.
Yeah, I was way more worried about playing Carson Wentz than I am playing Hurts. I mean, I just feel like he's really up and down. Carson Wentz, I felt like, especially towards the end, he just didn't have a chance. The wide receivers he was playing with, the tools and pieces around him just weren't up to par. And I felt kind of bad for him, but I'm glad I could root for him now that he's at the Colts.
Yeah, I feel that definitely. All right, so let's just dive right into these picks now, and let's start opening up this draft a little bit. You ready to do
ready.
that?
Yep, I'm ready.
All right, here we go. So with the number one, in the first round, I should say, the Cowboys' number 1 pick, 12th overall, Micah Parsons, linebacker out of Penn State, 6'3", 244 pounds. I have here that he has 26 games experience, and then I have some of the stats and stuff I listed for him. Just some of the stuff that stood out to me. He's the 2019 Cotton Bowl defensive MVP. So he didn't play in the 2020 season. He opted out that year. And during that, so going back to that Cotton Bowl in 2019, defensive MVP, 14 tackles, 3 tackles for loss, 2 sacks, 2 pass deflection, and 2 forced fumbles. So he went off that game, and it sounded like they were pretty convinced that he was ready for the draft. And that's basically what I read, is he opted out to get ready for the NFL draft, which, rightfully so. Again, this was my favorite linebacker of the draft. I wanted the Raiders to get him. There's a lot of great things that I like about him, but yeah, I mean, athleticism, good first step, anticipation. His closing speed is crazy. The biggest thing, though, that stood out for me on him is once he grabs you, like he doesn't miss tackles, basically. Once he grabs you, that's it. You're not getting away. But, I mean, yeah, I'm going to have you go ahead and break this guy down. What are your feelings on Micah Parsons here?
Well, first, the funny part about that MVP game, the Cotton Bowl, was actually at AT&T Stadium. So a lot of Cowboys fans, coaches, and people like that were around to see him do that. And I don't have this in my notes, but you mentioned him in 2019 was the last time he played. And if you watch his film, I mean, he's kind of a physical freak out there. So I would have loved to see what he looked like this year if there was a full season. But as we talked about before, he wasn't my number 1 choice. I wanted one of those corners, but as far as impact goes, just being a playmaker and an immediate starter, I think this is the guy that that they should have went with, and the person that they ultimately went with. But like I said, he's very big. He's fast. He has elite athletic skills. The range on him, you don't see that very often for a 6'3", 246-pound guy. I mean, he gets sideline to sideline. And as we know, the linebacker position is just evolving each year in the NFL. I mean, these guys are having to cover. They're having to take on offensive linemen. They're having to tackle guys, running backs, wide receivers. So there's a lot of pressure on these guys. When I first started looking at him, I remember even asking you, do you think he plays better moving forward than moving backwards? And, that was before I even thought the Cowboys were going to draft him. So right when they drafted him, I knew the player that Dallas was getting. I mean, he's very physical, moving downhill. I mean, especially blitzing. But I did have those questions about him in the passing game. So, I had to go back, watch a couple games of them. And the game that stood out to me most was versus Memphis. And it was the game that I felt like they passed the most in it. And you could see him in that game. He dropped back into zone. He covered tight ends, and it kind of, made me feel better about this pick and him being a 3-down player. So those are the things that I liked about him. A couple questions that I had about him were, he's a former defensive end. So he's only been playing linebacker for 2 years. He was recruited as a defensive end out of high school. So when he kind of steps into the hole to take on a offensive tackle or offensive guard to, play the run game, he kind of chooses a side rather than stacking the guy square up and reading the ball carrier and shedding to one side. It seems like he takes one side just like a defensive end does and tries to get around him. That's something I think that he's going to have to learn how to do and, close those running lanes for running backs in the NFL. But something I think he's definitely capable of doing, something that's very teachable for him. But, that was my only question for him. So the other things, like the pass coverage, I went back, looked at, and to me, I think he checked all the boxes.
Nice. Okay. Yeah, that's the only question that I had for him. Basically, it had to do with the top half pass coverage. Because as you mentioned before, very good, playing forward, very good with everything in front of him and being able to be athletic enough to react to that. But yeah, that was the only question I had for him as well, is sometimes he gets caught a little bit tall in that top half coverage. But yeah, that was just based on the limited film I had.
Yeah, go back and check out that Memphis game. You'll see him playing the pass pretty well there.
Awesome. All right. Yeah, I'll go back and check that out. That was a great pickup for the Cowboys. And like I said, that's who I wanted for the Raiders. But, man, looking forward to see what he can do in Dallas. And one thing I forgot to mention on top of that, too, is the retirement of Sean Lee recently. So kind of replacing Penn State with Penn State. I know there's a little bit of fraternity there with the linebackers, so it'll be good to see what kind of guidance Parsons can get from the leadership of Sean Lee, even though he, will not be active this year.
Yeah, Dallas went 3 whole days without a Penn State linebacker. Right when Sean Lee retired, they jumped right back in and took Parsons.
There you go. Had to replace a guy with the guy.
Yep,
got him. All right, so moving on to the second pick for the Dallas Cowboys, 44th pick overall. They went with Kelvin Joseph, cornerback out of Kentucky, 6'1", 192, and he transferred from LSU. So I have here, he played a couple games. I only have 20 games here. It could have been more than that. I got about 20 games estimated here. And I know a lot of the scouts were talking about possible off the field issues. I know that's not always 100% accurate. I'm not sure what the details are behind that, but I mean, watched a little film on him. He's a pest. This guy's a pest. That's the presence that I got from him, and that is in a good way. He brings that energy to the defense. So what are some of the things you saw from Joseph?
Yeah, first off, Joseph was probably I'll say my number 2 non-first round cornerback. So I had the 2 big guys there, but Joseph was climbing my board of my cornerback ranking since the moment I saw him. So what I like the most about him is he's not only fast, but he's like a twitchy athlete. You could see him flip his hips and kind of, mirror wide receivers. It's kind of looks effortless. And his technique at the line of scrimmage, when he's playing press, he kind of has like a read step where he lets the wide receiver release. He doesn't really put his hands on him, lets them do their release whichever way they want to go. Then he just places his hands either on the shoulder pads or midsection of the wide receiver and kind of feels them throughout the route. And what I like the absolute most about that is that allows him to stay on the hip of the wide receiver that he's covering downfield or wherever he may be going, but also flip his head around and track the ball. If you notice, he had a lot of ball production for however many games he had, which wasn't a lot, but he knows how to find the ball. And that's what I felt like kind of separates regular cornerbacks from elite ones, is their ability to turn around, find the ball, and kind of turn into the wide receiver down the field. So that's what I love the most about him. I mean, I noticed a few things. If you watch versus Miami, I mean, Pitts puts a move on him, kind of turns him around and, just flat out beats him. And to me, I felt like Kelvin Joseph at this area, he wasn't taking Pitts as seriously as he should have. I mean, he probably went inside, thought he was going to be covering a tight end like he's done since high school and pretty much win the rep. But Kyle Pitts is another animal. He's very fast and very wide receiver like. So I think he caught Kelvin Joseph sleeping. So maybe just a little bit of that, lazy technique caught him off guard. But I feel like at the end of the day, Dallas isn't going to be using this guy to cover tight ends. He's going to be an outside cornerback and, playing his side of the ball. Trayvon Diggs is going to be on the other side. And, I think he's going to be thrown in the fire just because the Dallas Cowboys are not very deep at cornerback. So he's going to be starting. He's going to be playing against these guys, Julio Jones, whoever he may be matching up with that week. But hey, he's going to learn, and I think he's going to progress well. And hopefully by year 2, we really see what his potential is.
Yeah, great athlete right there in Kelvin Joseph. I really enjoyed watching his film, and that's exactly what I had on him as my top attribute here, right under picked off Mac Jones, who, as you know, was one of my favorite draftees this year. But right under that, he has great awareness. So under that, I put locates the ball. He has active hands. And as you said, that's what makes a defensive back elite. Is one thing to keep up with a guy, to keep up with these shifty, speedy receivers. But when the ball's in the air, when there's a play to be made, they're able to turn, locate, and make a play. A lot of times, these elite guys make it look way, way easier than it is. So it's easy to forget that is a huge part in coming into the next level. So, yeah, I know there was a couple off the field issues mentioned. Possibly I put a question mark next to that. As I said, I don't know much of the detail about it. I know that he started at LSU initially and then transferred to Kentucky. Do you know anything about what the issues are behind that?
Well, I just feel like with the Cowboys, there's always a catch. Whenever we get one of these players that I really liked, I felt like he possibly could be a first-round talent. There's always a catch that comes along with it with their second-round guys. But he did, he had the off-the-field issues. I mean, first of all, at LSU, I'm pretty sure it was failed weed test. It was failed drug test. The NFL's not as strict as they used to be on this, so – I hope it doesn't become an issue. He won't miss games because of it. He will get fined if it does become an issue. But, this is just a chance that you got to take with a guy that has kind of a higher ceiling in the second round. Other than that, when he transferred from LSU because of those issues, he went to Kentucky. A couple people did say he was a little bit difficult to coach. And, his off the field stuff, he has other interests. He has a aspiring rap career. And even though that's not necessarily a negative thing, you can kind of see where these tendencies, could pop up again. I don't know if this is his number one choice to be making money playing football or rapping or what it may be, but hopefully he knows this is where his bread gets buttered. This is where he could, make a good living. And I mean, especially if you're a Dallas Cowboy, you play great for them for 10 years. Go ahead and be a rapper and get your fame and do whatever you want from there. But just put in these couple years for us and you should be on your way.
Rapper. I think I did hear that. Yeah, I think I did hear that at one point in time. I totally forgot about it as far as, being a distraction. I mean, just making this podcast, as you know, it takes a ton of time. It takes some dedication to be able to produce just a show and then put it on YouTube. But to make, rap albums and stuff like that, that's got to be way more time demanding. So hopefully the time management isn't an issue too much there for Kelvin Joseph. I mean, playing for the Cowboys.
Yeah. Boss Man Fat. Check him out on YouTube. More albums than Kendrick Lamar.
Oh man. Okay. That's the selling point there. Now I got to check it out. So
there you go.
We'll see. He's giving Kendrick some competition apparently. All right, moving into the number 3 pick. And this is one that I was actually particularly surprised by in a good way. This guy's a freaking beast. I really enjoyed the film on him. Osa Adigizua. the defensive lineman from UCLA. You guys selected him 75th overall, 6'2", 279. He has 4 years experience, played 37 games, and that included 27 and a half tackles for loss and 11 and a half sacks, 4 pass deflections, 2 forced fumbles I also have here. But at 6'2", 279, I know before even watching film on him, one of the common things questioned was his size. But after watching film on this guy, his motor is nonstop. He has the athleticism of an outside linebacker. And man, my favorite thing was watching him actually turn the corner, where he would start lined out interior, then he would stunt to the outside, and he got around that corner with some freakish closing speed. So I mean, I'm sure you got to be happy about this pick here coming out of UCLA. What are some of the notes you had on Osa?
Yeah, I loved Osa coming out. He was one of my highest ranked defensive tackles. I would have been happy with him in the second round. And that's just going back to the position of need that I think Dallas needed, which was defensive tackle. And pretty much like you said, he's very athletic. I even put in my notes, could he be like a 3-4 outside, 3-4 defensive end? Is he going to, could he move out a little bit further, because he did have that athleticism? But what I love the most about him, he's an every down player. He's going to play all 3 downs. He has a very high motor. He's powerful. He pushes the pocket on passing downs, and he plays with just great leverage. And I think that just goes back to his wrestling background. In high school, he was 91-0 as a wrestler. So that just shows how dominant he was there, how this kind of transfers to the trenches, where he could use that leverage. He could extend his arms. He gets good hand control. He could shed guys. He always keeps his head up, eye on the ball. He knows where it's going. And I think the ceiling is really high with this guy, and just a bonus for defensive tackles is being able to rush the passer. So I think this guy has a really high ceiling, great work ethic. And I know they did say he's a little bit thin for this position, but just knowing the way he works, the type of guy he is, I don't think he'll have any issues putting on another 10, 15 pounds, and it'll probably be straight muscle. The only questions I had on him were he was playing a lot of pass heavy teams. I watched him versus USC and versus Washington, and I thought maybe he's a little bit unproven versus the run just because he doesn't have the reps. But when you watch this guy play, I've seen him do it a couple times, maybe not over 100 times, but I think he can handle it just with that leverage and his strength. It's just another tool that he'll be able to add. And like I said, I think he'll be able to play all 3 downs.
Nice. Yeah. Every down player. That's huge, especially in that D lineman with, all the personnel these days that is being switched in and out, just, of the various offensive packages and whatnot. Very, very nice to have somebody there that could stay out there. Mm-hmm. Another thing I noticed about him is, there's a lot of pre-snap shifting. He would start on the tackle position, then he'd shift into the nose and vice versa, and was able to get success at both spots. Even while I have noted here drawing double teams. So I noticed he drew a good amount of double teams and was still able to get that production, and is still able to allow his other linemen to eat, you know what I mean? So good motor on this guy. I'm looking forward to watching him.
Yeah, one more thing I just wanted to add. His brother was a former NFL player too, so I always look at bloodlines. It just shows his older brother came into the NFL, became a pro. This guy knows how to be a pro. He knows what he's getting into. He knows the work it's going to take, and I think there's just a big upside with him. Good luck, Osa.
There we go. Definitely positive there. And one thing I want to bring back up is the undefeated wrestling. 90 that's crazy. And as we both know, wrestlers they have some great techniques. So yeah, that's an interesting note right there.
Yeah, 91-0 in the heavyweight division. So that just shows you he's been dealing with 300-pound men since he was in high school. So I don't think this is anything new to him. He's got some big hands, very strong. I'm really high. This is one of my favorite picks.
Awesome. Yeah, I'd love to see how that transitions there for him. Moving on here, we got the fourth pick overall, the fourth pick for the Dallas Cowboys, the 84th pick of the 2021 draft. We have Chauncey Golston, who's an edge rusher out of Iowa, 6'5", 270 pounds. He has 4 years experience, 43 games. So he has 129 total tackles, 27 tackles for loss, 7 pass deflections, which really stood out to me, and 3 interceptions. So, I mean, you mentioned size earlier. They're going after some big players. I mean, this guy has the height definitely, and then 270. He's might be a little bit light, for some of the coaches in the league, but I mean, we'll see. I was actually a little bit underwhelmed by Goldston. I expected a little bit more just based on what I read about him. It doesn't seem to have that constant motor that we were just talking about with Osa. But yeah, I think the biggest thing, just to sum it all up for him, I think is just he's a little streaky. So I saw flashes of greatness, where he's going all out, that motor is running, and he's doing everything he can to get in the backfield. But then I also saw plays where, he might have tried to, it looked like to me, he tried to just outpower, just kind of bull rush people. And it didn't always work out for him, especially, as you mentioned before, 300-pound lineman. So what was your breakdown on Golston?
Yeah, I kind of feel the same way as you. This wasn't one of my favorite picks. This is another size length guy, and it's funny. I looked up his mock draftable, which compares all of his measurables from from his pro day, and his most comparable player was Cleveland Farrell, who you're pretty familiar with, but he has very long arms. He shows the ability to extend them and shed, and I think he sets the edge better than he gets the edge. I just didn't see much flash with this guy. I think, a lot of people, gave him praise for his character and his motor. I have no doubt about the character. He's a 2-time captain, but the motor I didn't always see. When he lost like a pass rush rep, it seemed like he kind of stalled out and didn't, stay on that horse and get after the quarterback. 2 things that I noticed is, he might have a little bit below average strength, but I feel like that's something that can be taught, or he could work on in the NFL and become stronger. But he has nearly no bend, which is something I feel like can't be taught. You either have bend to get around the edge or you don't. So to me, he's never going to be like an elite pass rushing type of guy. He's going to be more of a run stopper. He's going to be a guy that sets the edge and kind of, I don't think he has a very high ceiling, maybe a higher floor than that. It's just no flash. I didn't see many pass rush moves, but this might have been a safe pick rather than, go with a character guy or something like that.
Right. And then coming out of the Big Ten there, Iowa, I mean, they're known for being a physical team. So maybe he got a little bit of love there. But yeah, interesting point you made where it's more apparent that he sets the edge as opposed to getting that edge. And I think that sums it up really well right there. Not something I had in my notes, but I guess I just didn't have a way of making the note of that. So yeah, definitely good point there. He sets the edge. He doesn't quite get it. So hopefully there's some improvement there, and he'll be able to bring the competition in camp. Moving on to the number 5th pick for the Cowboys, number 99 overall, Nahshon Wright, cornerback out of Oregon State. He's played 2 years, 18 games experience. He has 49 solo tackles, 5 interceptions, 5 pass deflections. He even had 1 sack here. So that's one of the first things that I noticed on the video. I forget who he was playing. Excuse me. I forget who he was playing, but he was able to come in on a blitz and sneak into that backfield at a pretty quick rate. So I put pretty good closing speed here. He might have the potential to bait receivers, but that was, against receivers in the Pac-12. Not every single receiver that he played against is going to move on to the league. So didn't know much about this guy coming in. He gets, great praise from coaches and players, but didn't know much about him. 6'4", 188 pounds. What are some of your feelings on this pick?
This was the first guy that I kind of felt like Dallas went with the traits instead of the better player. Of course, he's big, but this pick just took me by surprise. Like most people, I haven't heard of him. So that night I had to go back and start watching tape on him. Honestly, I love his confidence. On his first interview on dallascowboys.com, they asked him to kind of explain his game and the way he plays. And he flat out said, I'm a more athletic Richard Sherman. So as we all know, Richard Sherman's one of the best to ever play the way that he plays. But yeah, he's absolutely huge, 6'4", 183. Think he needs to add a little bit more meat to those bones. But when I watched him, he had experience playing press and off coverage. And believe it or not, I think his hips are a little bit better than I expected from a 6'4" guy. I did think he kind of turned them a little bit too early just because he doesn't have as much confidence as a guy like an Asante Samuel or Kelvin Joseph, just because he's so big and it takes him a long time to turn him around. But he has absolutely great ball skills. Those 5 interceptions and 11 pass deflections were only in 18 games. So seems like he gets his hand on the ball at least once a game. And to add on to that, he plays pretty aggressive moving downhill. If you watch him versus screens, he's blowing those things up and running back passes in the flats. It's like, all right, this guy is kind of playing to his size. So I know Dallas wants to be a little bit more aggressive with their cornerbacks. And this is a guy that, I wasn't too happy with the pick when I initially saw it because I think there are a couple better players they could have picked. But this is when I got to put my faith in them with them on. Let the coaches coach him up. The couple things that I noticed that I really didn't like about him is he constantly got stacked. And when I say got stacked is the wide receiver will beat him like in a 9 route and move in front of him so that he can't run through his back. And I don't know if the coaching staff was teaching him to play underneath like this, but I like guys that kind of play more over the top, maybe let a out route or a dig or something like that happen rather than getting beat, because I feel like that's a recipe for getting like a 50-yarder thrown on you. But other than that, he's skinny. He needs to add some strength, especially if he wants to play press man in the NFL. But another guy that's a ton of traits. I think he could develop into something. I honestly don't see it this year, especially becoming the JUCO route, then going to Oregon State. It's going to be a huge jump all of a sudden playing for the Dallas Cowboys. So this is a guy that I think is going to be depth, maybe even special team stuff, but I just don't see him coming in right away and being very productive.
Got it. Yeah, definitely one of those lengthy guys you were talking about at 6'4" and playing corner. Do you think with his size, there's any possibility of him playing safety?
I don't believe this guy. I think there's a guy we're going to talk about a little bit later where they flat out said we see safety in his future. But I think this is a guy that Dan Quinn was the coach for Seattle Seahawks during the Legion of Boom era. So I think he does see this Richard Sherman type of guy. I mean, this is a top 100 pick, and whenever I talk about top 100 picks, that's pretty much all I focus on, because I think these are the guys that need to be either starting for you or become starters. So I have very high expectations for these top 100 guys. And I think he could have, fell to the 4th or maybe even 5th round if they want to take a chance on him. But, Dan Quinn, he saw what he likes, and hopefully he could develop him into something special.
Yeah, interesting to see what Quinn's going to do there in Dallas. That defense, always interesting.
Yep, he was the tallest DB in the draft.
Oh wow, okay, I didn't know that. I know he's definitely got that length on him. Next pick, that was the number 6 pick for Dallas, number 115 overall, and in my opinion, this was the steal of the draft. Jabril Cox, linebacker, LSU, 6'4", 231 pounds. And I didn't know this beforehand, but he actually transferred from North Dakota State University. So he has a total of 4 years experience, and 55 games was something that stood out to me. I actually put a question mark on it at first just to make sure I had that right. But 45 games at North Dakota State, 10 games at Louisiana State. And And at North Dakota State alone, he had 258 tackles, 32 tackles for loss, and 14 sacks. Then in his year with Louisiana State, 58 total tackles, 6.5 tackles for loss, 1 sack, and 3 interceptions, 5 pass deflections. So, as I mentioned, in my opinion, this was the steal of the draft. I didn't expect the guy to be around this long. Actually, was able to watch a little bit more film on him because I took a look at some of the linebackers beforehand, before the draft. So Jabril Cox, I have him, he's as the steal of the draft. As the steal of the draft, like I said, he can get sideline to sideline. He has that good motor I was talking about. Those feet do not stop. And he lined up anywhere from the film that I watched. He went down on the edge. He dropped back into coverage. He was outside mainly, but very versatile. And I was wondering if he could cover tight ends, but we'll get to that in a little bit. Just a couple of the negatives I had about him is sometimes he could play a little bit tall, when he is on the next level, when he's in the second level and he's dropping into pass coverage. I mean, I'm sure it has a little bit to do with him being in zone, but I think he gets caught up a little bit looking at the quarterback and not moving his feet when he keeps his head on the quarterback too much. But I mean, a very small critique. I was actually looking for some negatives to pull out from this guy's gameplay, but great player, great motor. I mean, Jabril Cox, what do you think?
Like you said, I think this was the steal of the Dallas Cowboys draft. They picked him at 115 overall. The Athletic Consensus Big Board had him at number 58 overall. So I think that's just great value. I think he deserved definitely to go earlier, especially with the way these modern NFL linebackers are going. He's fast. He's athletic. I love his instincts. When you see him verse screens, he's like a screen killer. He sees it coming a mile away. He gets downhill and covers ground very quickly to just break those up. He gets his hands on the ball like a cornerback. That's what I really like. He had 26 pass deflections and 9 interceptions in his college career. I mean, that's better than these cornerbacks that we're just talking about. He plays man and zone coverage. Like you said, we've seen him cover tight ends and wide receivers. I mean, he's pretty special in coverage, and my favorite part about that is pairing him with Micah Parsons. Micah Parsons, the downhill run stopper. This guy, can drop in his zone and play the pass. So I think we got the best of both worlds in that aspect. And I wouldn't be surprised if these guys ended up being the starters in 2 years. Maybe if a couple of the current linebackers move on. But my negative on him was versus the run. I think he needs to be a little bit better versus the run, filling those holes and taking on those guards and tackles just in the run game. I feel like if he was decent at this or, showed a better ability of doing, he would have been a first round linebacker just with his speed and coverage ability. If you could, and that's something I think is teachable, put a little bit more muscle on him. There might be a, double-edged sword on that one because he's such a great coverage guy. You don't want to take that away from him. It's like, use him. I kind of feel like you put Jalen Smith, the Cowboys' other linebacker, in on running downs. You take him out on passing down, and here comes Jabril Cox. It's play both of those guys to their strength, and then you have Parsons and Leighton Vander Esch playing all the other time. So I really like the linebacker core now. I think these two guys just really made the other two have to step up their game. And with the way the NFL's going, he's a perfect pick.
Yeah, I could definitely see him turning up that competition level at training camp. So good on the Cowboys for being able to snag him. And going back to just piggybacking on some of the negatives that you said about the run, I have here that I'd like to see him on the attack a little bit more often. And I think that speaks to, like you were saying, filling the holes, taking on some of those guards. Because my next note here is shedding the blocks could improve. So I think that kind of gets packaged together right there where, it would be nice to see him step up in the holes, take some of that stuff on, and be able to make his move from there. So looking forward to seeing that competition turn up in practice, and we'll see where he goes. Definitely steal.
I liked it.
Moving on here to the 7th pick by the Dallas Cowboys, number 138 overall, got Josh Ball, offensive tackle, out of Marshall, 6'8", 309. So crazy size on this guy. I have here he actually was a transfer from Florida State, but he has 3 years experience in 26 total games. According to the film, this guy is obviously good enough to play in this league. How good will he be? I'm not sure. But I have here, very strong, and he's an attacker. So it was very obvious to me that he's the one delivering the hit. He is usually the first to engage. And he's another one of those pests that I was talking about earlier. You know what I mean? He has those little in between tactics that he does to kind of get in the head of his opponent. But he's another guy that, we mentioned off the field issues earlier. And I'm wondering, I don't know the details behind that, but I'm wondering how much of that had to do with the multiple transfers and what's going to come of that. So I'm, again, not too sure what the particular issues are, but hoping that he can put that kind of stuff behind him and make a name for himself in Dallas. What do you think of Josh Ball?
Yeah, this is another guy where this is just what you get being a Cowboys fan. They're going to take their chances on guys like this. I mean, like you said, I don't know the details about it, but just breaking him down as a football player, he has the talent, he has the size. I watched one game of him versus UAB. There's not much film on him. He's out of Marshall, so only got to watch the one game. He can move good for his size. I mean, mirroring defensive ends and just playing in space on screens, getting to the second level, seemed like he could do it all there. And he had decent power to kind of generate movement and put his back towards the ball carrier and kind of create those running lanes. On that one game that I watched, he gave up one pressure and no sacks. So he played pretty well there. The only negatives I have is his level of competition. He was playing UAB, which isn't, an elite school. He is a waist bender at 6'7". It seems like he's kind of trying to match the playing level of the defender. So he bends at the waist rather than kind of squatting with his legs and keeping the power underneath him. And that's just something that I think, NFL defensive ends are really going to take advantage of, knocking him off balance or whatnot. But again, something else that could be taught. I think he needs to add a little bit more weight. He is 308 pounds, which is huge, but on a 6'7" frame for an offensive lineman, I think, he could shape that up just a little bit better. And this is something that Dallas needed. The last couple of years, Tyron Smith has been hurt. Lyle Collins missed pretty much the whole year last year. And this is a guy where Dallas saw, a good player that was falling for an off the field reason, and they jumped on it. And, we've seen guys that have had issues like this come into the NFL, but when you're a Dallas Cowboy, that light shines pretty bright on you, and, people don't forget.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Yeah. As you said, the film was kind of limited on him. So I at first just started reading a couple of the breakdowns that I saw out there. And one question about him that had to do with actually on the field play was the fact that during the 13 games he played at Marshall, it was kind of on a rotational role. So he wouldn't play every down, every game. I'm not sure what the percentage ratios are there. But one interesting note is while he got knocked for that, their line actually produced, or he helped that line produce the Conference USA MVP, which was their running back, Brendan Knox. So I thought that was a pretty cool little side note to throw on the resume there for him.
Yeah, now that you mention it, I do remember seeing him rotate out and having to fast forward until the big guy came back in. Good catch there.
Yeah. So, looking forward to see what Josh Ball can do, because of the limited film that I did see, it was obvious to me that he's ready for the next level. There are some things that he needs to work on, but as far as him, being able to handle himself, I don't think there will be an issue there. I did see a couple of times where he used a little bit of lazy technique, but I was wondering if it was because of the level of competition, because it's not like he got beat because of the technique he was using. And the small example that I have here is that instead of, engaging and driving his feet, sometimes he was strong enough to just punch that end out of the way. Didn't happen very often, but when it did, he basically knew that he had the total advantage. And I felt like his technique kind of suffered a little bit out of that. But again, that could definitely be due to the level of competition that he was dealing with.
I agree.
So going in now, we have the number 8 pick for Dallas, number 179 overall, Simi Fehoko, the receiver out of Stanford, 6'4", 227, 3 years experience, 22 games. He's 2 years as a starter. And during that time, he had 62 receptions, 1,146 yards, and 9 touchdowns. So saw some pretty good speed from this guy. He's obviously a speed guy, good hands. And I saw him actually lower the shoulder a couple of times. So not a bad route runner. I saw him find the open space a few times, but there was a few times where he didn't back down from that contact. He lowered his shoulder on the secondary there. So that's always exciting to see. I think one of the big things that stood out for me as far as things he needs to work on is his blocking. I think that could improve, but that's also kind of a generalized thing. You know, it could be broken down a little further than that. What did you think of Fiocco here out of Stanford?
This is a guy I knew nothing about prior to the draft. So I had to go back and watch him. If you watch the game versus UCLA, he absolutely dominated. I think he had 3 touchdowns in that game, but you know, not every game's your best game. He's huge. He's huge. He's a fast wide receiver, 6'4", 222. He actually ran a 4.39 at his pro day, and he did it twice back to back. So I'm taking those numbers. He also had an elite 3 cone, which you usually don't see these straight line big guys going side to side the way he does. How I picture him is more of, you know, I take the top off deep threat for Dallas, and, you know, he makes the contested catches. He makes catches in traffic, which to me, Dallas doesn't really have a guy like this. I mean, they have Noah Brown, who's definitely not as good as an athlete as this guy. He's 2 inches shorter. So this just kind of brings a different element and physicality to the Dallas Cowboys wide receiver room. His number one comparison from other sites that I saw and his mock draftable, which is all his testing numbers, was Chase Claypool. Now, I don't think he's going to come out and produce like Chase Claypool did this year. He's still very raw. His balance, he has a little bit of balance issues. I don't know if you noticed, every time he caught the ball, he didn't really get the yards after the catch. He seemed to stumble. He seemed to fall. I don't know if it's just because he wanted to secure the catch, but I think that's something he needs to work on. But back to the rawness, he's only has 22 games, and he's an older prospect. He's 24 years old. And I mean, Zeke right now is 25 years old, and he's been in the NFL for 5 years. So this guy, he's a little bit of a late bloomer because he took a 2-year Mormon mission between college and high school. So this is just a guy that, you know, Dallas is going, a guy that might not have the best character issues, to a guy with absolutely a clean streak and is going to come in there and work hard. And, you know, I think, don't be surprised if this guy comes in and starts contributing year 2. This next year coming up, I think he's going to be a special teamer. I'd love to see him as a gunner with that speed, that size, that strength. I think he's very physical. He's not afraid to lay the hat. And, you know, this is a guy that I think in the long term is going to develop into something that, you know, we see coming in being a number 3 wide receiver. And, you know, Gallup might move on next year. So I wouldn't be surprised if he just stepped in and kind of filled in for that reliable big body pass catcher for Dak.
Like it. I like it. Yeah, that going, like you said, you kind of see him as being a year 2 contributor. Mm-hmm. And I agree with that 100%. Going into training camp this year, he definitely has his work cut out for him. But like you said, it doesn't seem like dedication is an issue. So I'm sure he has the mindset to go in there and get to work and work his ass off. Hopefully could find a spot on the special teams roster. That would be great. Normally you don't think of a receiver as a defensive guy, so to speak, but the thought of him flying down and using his physical traits to be able to make some noise and make a name for himself, I think that's the perfect opportunity for him, because I could definitely see him turning into one of those change of speed guys. And that's not something I would normally link with a 6'4" receiver. Someone of that size, usually it's the smaller, shifty, speedier guys. Not to say that he can't line up on the outside, but I could see him coming in, lining up, slot, maybe throwing off some linebackers and turning it into a mismatch or something like that. Just change the speed, like I was saying. So yeah,
Yeah.
hopefully he's a hard worker.
Yeah, if you watch his tape too, he lined up outside and in the slot, so he has experience doing that. And even though I do have way bigger hopes than special teams for Nashawn Wright because he was a top 100 pick, imagine having him on one side as a gunner and Simi Fehoko on the other side. Just two huge athletes that are running 4.4 or less, and really having some good coverage.
Yeah, that's an elite 40 time for someone that size. So good luck to Fiocco there. All right, moving on to the number 9th pick. We have Quentin Bohanna, defensive lineman out of Kentucky. 192nd pick overall, 6'4", 357 pounds. 4 years experience, which totaled up 45 games. And in each of those 4 years, he played in a bowl game. 58 total tackles, 9.5 tackles for a loss, 2 sacks. I mean, number one thing I have for him is experience, but I'm going to repeat myself again. Another one of those motor guys. He likes to keep his feet moving. He has a good power swim move, and he was able to keep his head up through blocks and be able to disrupt that backfield still, even while, there was a wall in front of him. The one negative that I have here is watching the game film against Bama. He was almost non-existent for me. So that's the game film I watched on Bohanna is kind of limited here. What did you feel about this pick?
This is a pick that I'm really going to keep my eyes on because I looked at a lot of defensive tackles this year, and one of my favorite guys was Kairos Tonga from BYU. And I feel like they're the same player, but I thought Kairos was so much better. So, I'm going to be comparing these guys, their careers for the next couple of years here. But as far as Bohanna goes, he's a big guy, and I think he actually carries it well. For 327 pounds, I think he carries it well. He has 34-inch arms, which are absolute monsters, some vines out there. He could hold the line of scrimmage. He does decent versus those double teams. And again, I did watch that Bama game as well. What I say is turn on his tape versus when they're on the goal line, and he wrecked shop a little bit. I do wish he stayed on his feet a little bit more. He kept going down to the ground and trying to clog the holes, but that's pretty much a NFL offensive line, and I think he did decent. He flashed a little bit of a club swim move. He did have some stunt experience, but I don't think that's something he should be doing. He's just too slow to be doing it, and it was pretty much ineffective versus Alabama. The negatives that I have on him is this guy has no range. Don't expect him to make any plays outside of the box. He's going to be planted right in the middle of that defense, and he doesn't bring much of a pass rush. I didn't like his closing speed when he did have an open lane to the quarterback. Took him a while to get there. His change of direction wasn't very good. So this guy is going to be a very specific role type. He's going to go on there early downs. This isn't, a 3-down player. He's going to go in there on the early downs. He's going to try to stuff the run. He's going to try to take up blocks and really let these linebackers that we just drafted and have on the team kind of do their thing. One thing that Dan Quinn did mention in his press conference afterwards when they asked him about Bohanna was he said he's running a 3-4, and he said his defensive lineman, he wanted 1 plug and 2 jets. This guy's the plug. This is the guy that's going to just be plugging up those blocks, and hopefully he can occupy 2 of the gaps and do all the dirty work.
Nice. All right. Yeah, I'll definitely have to go back and check out some of that goal line technique from Bohanna. But yeah, crazy to see what this could turn into. I'm not very familiar with him. I think the only player I watched out of Kentucky was Kelvin Joseph. So we'll see what happens for Bohanna coming up here.
Yeah, one thing I did want to add in too is he got up to 350 pounds before, which, that might be an issue if he could just needs to stay in shape. The NFL's not afraid to put you on a scale and make sure you stay underneath a certain weight. And just if you watch the Tennessee game, at the very end of the game, he gets frustrated when the quarterback kneels at the end. They just lost. He picks up the ball and throws it across the field. So just stuff like that. You can't do that in the NFL, and, you know, it just shows a little bit of maturity that might need to take place there.
Got it. I definitely want to look for that one. I didn't see that one. I'll definitely have to check that one out right there. Moving on to the number 10 pick for the Dallas Cowboys, number 227 overall, Israel Mokuamu, cornerback out of South Carolina. Another one of those lengthy guys, 6'4", 212 pounds, 3 years experience, played 25 games, 86 total tackles, 4 tackles for loss, 7 interceptions. One of those was taken to the house. He has 10 pass deflections. This guy, I'm guessing that he was overshadowed by J.C. Horn and the campaign that everyone had going behind him. But this guy can play. I'm surprised I didn't see him on any of J.C. Horn's film before. But this guy can play. Obviously, there's always going to be some questions with the corner of that height at 6'4". Obviously, it's very difficult to stay with some of the speedy receivers. But just watching him, I enjoyed it. I feel like he plays like a shorter, more compact guy. He's very aware of his size, because on the other side of that, he can actually use his length to go get plays. There's a couple times that I saw the quarterback trying to throw the ball away, trying to, put it out of reach, and this guy found a way to make a play on it. He has great hands. Another one of those guys that has good reaction to the ball. He has good recovery speed too. I think he's really good on the press. Anytime that he might have got caught with his hips turned the wrong way, he was able to make up for it. Pretty good. So there's a couple times I might have seen him get caught out of position. I mean, that's going to happen anyway, playing defensive back there. But in particular, there's a play I watched against Ole Miss where they had Yeboah, who was a tight end, coming out on a wheel route, and he kind of caught Mokuamu out of position there. Again, that's one play out of many, but was really enjoying watching film on this guy. What's your take on Mokuamu?
This is another guy. He's fitting the theme that Dallas had this year, which was the size and speed. There were only 2 corners in this draft over 6'4", and Dallas got them both. It was Mukuamu and Nahshon Wright. So both of the big corners, they had to have them. I thought he moved pretty decent for his size. He has experience at corner, slot, and safety, which, they're just moving him all around. And I think the first thing that you see with this guy is his ball skills. He makes plays on the ball. He has a huge catch radius. He was a former wide receiver, and I think he just makes quarterbacks pay for bad throws. Overthrows, underthrows, it's like he seems to be in the right place and, gets his hands on it. And I know you mentioned he might have been overshadowed by J.C. Horn, who, of course, was the number 1 cornerback there. He actually led the team in interceptions the last 2 years. I don't know if that was because J.C. Horn just didn't get tested as much, but it just shows he has some ball skills. And I think how I like to play this, how I would like to play him is an off coverage. I like how he plays the ball in the air when he sees it, when he's looking at the quarterback and kind of, has the wide receiver in front of him. A lot of people thought, he's going to be a press man corner, but yeah, I don't really like him there. If you notice when he's in press, it kind of seems like his feet are stuck in mud. He gets a late flip, and numerous times the wide receiver will just run around him, and now he's playing catch up. He's getting stacked. He's losing ground, and I thought he played way better when he's looking forward and reading, using his instincts and reading the quarterback. So another thing I saw, if you watch him versus Kyle Pitts gets another one on him, but this one is short yardage in the red zone. It just shows little quicker moves will kind of get him off balance, and he just Kyle Pitts just created so much separation that it was a little bit embarrassing. But another thing, his change of direction, he didn't run the 3-cone, he didn't run the short shuttle at his combine, and that's on purpose. He didn't want to look bad. He didn't want those numbers showing up, which might have been smart on his end, but Yeah, I think ideally the Cowboys have mentioned they want to put him at safety. Hey, if we get a guy that can play corner, we'll keep him at corner. But I think his spot is going to be at safety. And, Dallas is struggling at safety for the 100th year in a row. So I don't really see him being much more than a special teams guy at this point, but another developmental guy where when you're in the 6th, 7th round, I mean, take these traits, take these side speed guys and see what they turn into.
Yeah, speaking of safeties, I mean, I got to bring up Trevon Moehrig. I know he was big on your board as far as defensive back goes, and I was very happy to see the Raiders snag him. I didn't think he would be around even for the second round. So the fact that they traded up to get him, I was actually really excited about that as a fan that knows what it's like to struggle at that safety position there. So
yeah, and they traded above Dallas. They knew Dallas had their eyes on him. I think that would have been the pick, and they did end up taking Kelvin Joseph, who we'll see. We'll see how that turns out. But the only thing I could say there is I think cornerback is a way more valuable position. So I didn't really mind that, but I would have loved to have Moehrig on this team.
Got it. Yeah, really, really excited to see him compete, and I'm hoping he could find a spot there where he can consistently get some playing time. Yeah, going back to Mokuamu, like I said, I really liked watching his game film, and I just felt like he brought that energy. It was obvious to me that the defense fed off of his energy, I should say. And surprisingly enough, he was the team captain. He was voted team captain in 2020. So I thought that was an interesting note to make on Mokuamu there.
Can never have too many captains on the team.
I like it. And the possibility of safety, that's something we were talking about earlier with one of the previous picks. And I think this was the guy you were referring to.
Exactly.
Possibly getting some time over the top there, which, as you said, his ball skills, his athleticism, it's crazy to see him go after some of those low throws, and where that kind of takes my thought process is back to the pro throws we see a lot of these quarterbacks make, where their receiver might be covered, but they throw to a spot and let the receiver go down and get it. I feel like he's able to use his length to snatch up a lot of these balls off the turf. So it will be interesting to see what kind of opportunity he gets here.
Yeah, those 34-inch arms stretch far. And if you just look at the size, we talked about Wright. He was 6'4", 183 pounds. Israel Mukramu is 6'4", 212 pounds. So he's got a good 30 pounds on him. So I think that's what makes him better fitting for the safety role as well.
Got it. I like that. I like that difference right there. All right. So I think we are finally to the end of this list.
A lot of picks
this year, 11 total. We are on pick number 11 for Dallas, their final pick in the draft. Number 238 overall, Matt Farniok. Or is that how to pronounce it? Farniok?
Farniok, yeah. Farniok. I hope I learn his name.
Okay.
I hope he makes me.
There we go. I probably should have learned it right before we got on. But Matt Farniok, sorry if I mispronounced that. Offensive line out of Nebraska, 6'6", 330 pounds, 4 years experience, 39 games. The experience is the obvious thing. I felt like he had great feet. I don't think they ever stopped moving. He's versatile. I know he played a little bit of guard. I think the number one thing that stood out for him, for me, was he was actually voted team captain 2 times, which he was only the 13th player ever at Nebraska to earn that honor twice. So thought that spoke a lot about his character, thinking he could be a good leader there on that line eventually one day. What did you feel about this pick?
Another guy that I didn't know much about. So I went back and I watched, they have footage of him versus Iowa. And if you have watched defensive tackles, Davion Nixon plays for Iowa, and he was a highly touted, top 3 round type of guy. So I wanted to see him play against Davion Nixon. And when I watched that, I noticed that he redirected Nixon a couple times and, created those running lanes, got his back to the hole, which, is pretty valuable. What the biggest thing that I noticed is there were no glaring holes. I didn't see him get beat. I didn't see him get tossed around. but I also didn't see any flash. I didn't see him pancaking guys. I didn't see him driving guys multiple yards down the field. I just saw a solid player. And as you said, with 34 games underneath his belt, I mean, especially at Nebraska, I'm not going to hate a 7th round, 34 start Nebraska offensive lineman. I mean, that this guy, as you said, he has experience at guard, and Dallas is already listing him as a guard on their depth chart. He even had experience playing center. So as we talked about with Ball previously, he had experience playing tackle. Hopefully this guy can kick inside and cover those 3 interior offensive line positions and kind of be the next man up there. Dallas is, known for kind of drafting tackles and making them guards. So this is nothing new to them. The only thing that I noticed for his tackle play was his range. He didn't really get ahead of guys when he was on screens. He didn't really work that second level. So maybe that's why they see him more as a guard here. But other than that, I think he might play a little bit too upright, which, something that could be coached with him. But I mean, guys like, Aaron Donald, that's just not going to work against guys like that. So hopefully he gets some experience, as a backup guy rather than a starter this year, because that means something bad happened. But another guy, traits, experience, you can't go wrong. Nebraska lineman.
Yeah, I can, a couple of the negatives there I can kind of piggyback on. I put second level blocking needs a little bit of work.
There you go.
And the note that I have under that is I put complex blocking, and usually that just involves more block than one, or more points of contact than one, or more than one point of contact, I should say, during a play. So in particular, there's a couple times where I saw him chipping a guy on the way in and then having to go after that linebacker. And it seemed like when that second element was kind of added, he was, I don't want to say confused, because it sounds like he didn't know what he was doing, but he just seemed out of place there. And I think the second level blocking, it was something that stood out for me as well.
Yep, I agree.
Boom. So we completed that list, all 11 picks from the Dallas Cowboys. So, I mean, first of all, thank you for breaking all those down. You definitely gave us some deeper analysis and gave me some more things to think about here with these prospects. Was there any of the picks here? I mean, we could talk about a couple of the surprises here, but was there any of the picks where you kind of felt like Dallas should have went in a different direction? Any in particular?
Yeah, I'm going to go back to that Nahshon Wright pick. The pick 99. I think I would have much rather had Melifonwu there, the cornerback. I just felt like, another size speed guy. I felt like he, played against better competition. I even think he is a little bit better of an athlete. And then if you would have taken Wright and the 5th or 6th round, then that would have been way more acceptable. And I just don't see many teams going after a 6'4", 183-pound cornerback. That's very scheme specific. So that was one. And then of course the other one that I mentioned was the Quentin Bohanna. I'm definitely going to be watching Kairos Tonga this year, because I had him as a late round steal. I didn't see many people high on him. I thought he was better than both of the USC guys. And those are the two I probably would have changed with. Other than that, I think that's just the way the draft kind of fell to us. And I don't mind taking a shot on those late round guys with just great traits.
Got it. Who are you looking forward to watching the most as far as competition goes? Which of these picks are you looking forward to watching the most?
Well, number one, I think Micah Parsons is just going to be a spark plug. I think he's, the obvious answer there. But other than that, Osa Odigizua, he was one of my favorite guys. Like I said at the very beginning, Dallas needed a lot of help in the trenches. This is a guy that I think is going to be a really good player, especially for the 3rd round. I can't wait to see him out there. Like I said, he's got 3 down potential, and he can make an impact on all 3 of those downs, stopping the run and pass rushing. So I can't wait to see Osa on the field.
Yeah, that guy definitely jumped off the screen for me. I didn't know much about him. I didn't get to look at a ton of defensive linemen leading up to the draft. So my knowledge there was very limited as it was, but another guy I really enjoyed watching his film. I mean, we mentioned Jabril Cox being a steal, and also the defensive back coming out of South Carolina there, Mukuamu. I thought he was a steal as well. But I'm really excited to see this guy. As I said, I really enjoyed his film, and I mean, I think he could do it all. You know, guy with great. I think he has great size. Obviously, undersized for the position if we're to bring up averages and whatnot. But if you could see all the things he can do, it's gonna be pretty amazing if he can make that transition and have a successful career here. So, hats off to Osa.
Yep, I got high hopes for him.
Yeah, absolutely. Anything else you want to throw in there at those picks?
If you want to get a feel for kind of how Dallas is going to play this year, you can go back and watch Atlanta versus the Dallas Cowboys. Actually, last year, Dan Quinn was still the head coach there. So you can kind of see he runs like a 3-4 scheme, and then he runs a 4-2 on passing downs. So I really dug into that film, and it's a really exciting game. On top of that, it comes out to like 30 something to 40 something, but you get an idea of exactly where these guys are going to be lining up as, and you can kind of fit them in. You could see a guy blitzing off the end, and you'll be like, oh, that's where Micah Parsons is going to play. Or you see a safety dropping down, and you'd be like, oh, that's where Israel Mukafanwu is going to play, you know, just blitzing off the edge. So you'll be able to kind of piece these guys in and, you know, picture it in your head.
Got it. One more thing, actually, I wanted to add, going back to Micah Parsons and the retirement of Sean Lee there. I know you had always been big on Sean Lee and his presence in the locker room as a leader while playing on that defense, whether he was on the injured list or not. Now that he's in retirement, I would think that somebody like that would still be involved, but at the same time has to take some time away to decompress. You know, it's a big step to lose the game of football after playing it for so long. Do you expect Sean Lee to have some involvement in the development of these young players?
Yeah, without a doubt. If you listen to his interview afterwards, it's pretty much, you know, written in stone. He wants to come in and coach. He said he can't be away from it for too long. He's even going to show up at training camp and things like that. And, you know, it's just sad. Sean Lee, a great player, constantly injured, and you could tell that just took a toll on him. He even said during his retirement press conference that, you know, he got injured so much that he felt like he owed it to Dallas to study that hard and be the leader and be like a coach on the field. So he took it very personal that, you know, he kept getting hurt, and, you know, he's just a guy that loves being around the game, and I don't really see him doing anything else. So it's in his blood.
Yeah, definitely a gamer through and through. It's great anytime a leader like that wants to come back and contribute and give back to the young guys. I know the Raiders and the Cowboys both are huge. They got that huge fraternity going of, you know, once a Raider, always a Raider. I'm sure it's the same with Dallas. You see those guys getting together at events all the time. Where I like to see them is wandering around the training camps, you know, interacting with the young guys. So anytime you can have someone of that caliber in the locker room and around your players, that's gonna help everyone, coaches included. So yeah, hats off to Sean Lee on a great career. Really enjoyed watching him and what he had to contribute to Dallas. And interesting factor, I didn't know that he took it. I know he takes things personal, but to take it as personal as, you know, just becoming that ultimate leader. If he wasn't going to be on the field, he was going to lead one way or another. So definitely a guy I want on my side.
Absolutely. Come back, Sean Lee. We need you.
Boom. Shout out Sean Lee. Covered a lot today. We covered 11 players, and again, you had some great stuff for them, gave us some great things to think about. Next up, we have the Las Vegas Raiders picks for the next episode. So I'm looking forward to diving into each of those player breakdowns for you guys, for the undrafted free agents, and have another episode lined up. So thank you. Just want to thank you, Duran, for joining me today and breaking down those picks for us. Again, if you guys are looking for some real fandom, go and listen to the Why We're Fans podcast. You can find that on Anchor. You can find it on Apple, Spotify, all the major platforms. You go up and find them on Twitter at Why We're Fans. You can find them on YouTube. Again, Duran and his co-host Gennaro break down everybody's fandom on every team. And the great thing is there's so many things to talk about. There's a lot of reasons why we like our teams, and they break that down for us. So definitely give that a listen. Duran, anything you want to add out before we close out, or anything you want to add in before we close out here?
No, man, that's it. Thanks for having me on. I love talking football, and I like talking Dallas Cowboys. So anytime I get that opportunity, I'll be here.
Absolutely. We'll have to dive into Dallas again as we start getting through training camp here, and hopefully have you back on.
I'll be ready for it.
Awesome. So thank you everyone for tuning in to Prime 3 Sports, the sports and sports culture podcast. Next time, as I said, I'll have a little bit more Raiders breakdown for you. But until then, this is Rob Muniz. Today we had Duran Muniz, and we are both closing out.